police investigating the killing of 16-year-old Brianna Gay, who died of stab wounds on Saturday after being attacked in Coolcheth Park in Warrington, had originally said there was no evidence that this was a hate crime. Today, that changed. Now they say all avenues are being explored, including potential hate crime. Two 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl, have been arrested on suspicion of murdering Brianna, who is transgender, and the police have been granted extra time for questioning. Tonight, many hundreds of people attended candlelit vigils in Liverpool and Bristol, and more are planned for Glasgow, Belfast and York, testament to the strength of feeling about her killing. Changes in how crime are recorded can make comparisons tricky, but it's the case that police statistics for England and Wales in the year to March 2022 showed that recorded hate crime against transgender people was up 56% on the previous year. We're now joined by the broadcaster, India Willoughby. She was the UK's first trans newsreader. India, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Now, at the moment, we don't know if this was a hate crime, but we do certainly know is that a young trans woman has died in appalling violent circumstances. I mean, you must have talked about it to others, but first, what are your thoughts on what's happened?
Well, thank you first of all for having me on, Kirsty. It's been coming, and I think everyone within the trans community and also the wider LGBT community have felt it, actually. There's a toxicity in the air that's been building now for 3 years minimum, and it's continually being ratcheted up by the government, the British media, and other forces out there. This is often pitched. It's actually pitched as women v trans, but that's not actually the case. It's something called the gender critical movement against trans. I mean, obviously, Nicola Sturgeon's a woman, Greta Thunberg's a woman. So this isn't an issue between women and trans. And this is a result, as far as I'm concerned, and this is the feelings of the trans community, definitely a consequence of the poisonous rhetoric that pours out of the British media.
Of course, I mean, the people you're talking about aren't here to participate in this discussion. It's really what I really want to hear from you tonight is, are people, what I would say is, are trans women, do you think, more fearful for their safety than they were 5 years ago?
Without a shadow of a doubt, things have changed dramatically. Yeah. There are trans people and their families who are currently looking to flee England. Scotland would definitely be one possible destination should Scotland get independence and the gender reforms go through. But they're looking further afield as well, places like Canada, New Zealand. New Zealand has already taken somebody who's trans from the UK because, as an asylum seeker as well, that was the condition that they took them on because of the toxicity over here. So things are really bad. We're actually classed by the Council of Europe as the most transphobic country in Europe, alongside Hungary and Russia.
But I wonder, because of all the issues that have been particularly affecting trans women recently, and because of the profile, and you say the undoubted hostility you say you're facing, are trans women less fearful about reporting aggression and hate speech now, do you think?
No, I'm afraid we're not, because there are people from the gender critical movement now in all walks of life, and I think that's something that trans people are conscious on. Just being trans, to be quite honest with you, Kirsty, at the moment, it feels like we have a target on our back. Being trans in itself has suddenly become a political statement of some kind.
But I want in a way to bring it back to what is happening and the dreadful murder of Brianna Gay. And at the moment, of course, we have no evidence that it is a hate crime, but what the police have said is they don't rule out anything and it could be a hate crime. And I wonder if, in a way, there's the power of your advocacy and so forth, how you think you can gain strength from dealing with things like this and actually coming together as a movement even more and actually facing out to the world and saying, we are going to be if we're fearful, we'll talk about it, and we expect the authorities to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think tonight you referenced the various vigils that are taking place around the country. They show that strength of camaraderie that exists within the trans community and the wider LGBT community. But this all comes down to how we're actually represented. Unless you have representation and see you as normal human beings, then things will never change. And unfortunately for trans people at the moment, we're just seen through one prism. Gandhi actually said, there's a famous saying by Gandhi who said that first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And trans people currently are at the fight stage. Everybody seems to be against us, but eventually we will come through.
Thank you very much for joining us, India Willoughby.